Hey guys, I hear a lot of people these days say, I don't discuss politics and religion with anybody because I can't change their mind and it just creates an argument. I couldn't disagree with that more. So I'm going to give you a few tips that I learned along the way that may help you not only not have an argument, but to actually win your point. So, I remember back when I was in the Navy, like as early as I was 19 years old, I was in the supply department. And one of the things I had to do was if our command wanted to buy something more than $500 outside of the naval supply system, I would have to go down to the civilians on base, and we had civilian oversight. And there was a master chief, retired master chief, who would make the final decision, but he had about 12 women under him that would process everything. And I really was bored with the supply job. The recruiter kind of talked me into it for various reasons I don't have time to get into. So I always wanted to get out of the office. Like 8 hours in the office is longer than 16 hours on the road running around. I'm telling you, it's so boring, but I couldn't stand it. But so I was always looking for an excuse to get out. So when I got to the supply department, I was in no rush to leave when I get to the civilians. And I would say out of a dozen women, all 12 of them were liberal Democrats, feminists, working women. And we would talk politics and religion all the time. And like some of our most heated debates was about abortion. And I was there 4 years, and I would go at least 3-4 times a week, and we would have these long debates. And I didn't win them all over, but I did win 2 who said over the years they, I got them thinking, and they didn't know some of the facts I was telling them about abortion. And when they looked into it, they became pro-life. So you can change people's minds. But even the 10 that never agree with me on nothing, it didn't seem like I changed anybody's minds at the time. When I left, I was there 4 years, and when my enlistment was up, I told them, I'm leaving, whatever day will be my last day. And on my last day, they called me there. They said, hey, they needed me down there for something. And I went down there, they threw me a surprise party, had a cake from me, a card, and all gave me a hug, said they were really going to miss our little conversations we had. And, I won them over as friends. Maybe I didn't win them over politically or religiously, but I won them over as friends and planted some seeds. And that's been my experience. And so I kind of thought, like, what do I do that maybe helps that? So first of all, I go in with an attitude that I could be wrong, if you go in like you know it all, you're just going to be butting heads, And the other principle I have is I give them the benefit of the doubt that their intentions are good. Now, the leaders of their party, the Democrats, I don't believe their intentions are good, but for the most people at our level, their intentions are good. And so I won't say my guy wants to do this and your guy wants to do that. I'll just give them the principle, the conservative belief, and show them how it makes sense. If you take away, at the time Reagan was president, if you take away Reagan's name and just tell them what Reagan believes, you get a totally different reaction. So I'll give you a quick example. Oh, it's so horrible. This is the liberal Democrat I'm talking to. And I'll get to religion because it's a similar principle too. But, oh, it's so horrible. These poor African-American kids have to go to such horrible schools. They don't have a chance. These schools are horrible. And I would say, yeah, I know it is. I said, it would be a great idea. I think in the 80s, they were spending like $5,000 a year on students. Now I'm sure it's like $20,000. But I said, the federal government spends $5,000 a year, to pay for one student to go through a public school. I said, imagine if they took that $5,000 and gave it to the parents of that kid and said, you can go to any school you want. a religious school, a Catholic school, a rich school on the other side of the town where all the rich white kids go to, a real good public school. I said, wouldn't that help? Not only would it help the young student, but it would give incentive for the failing schools to do better because they were losing that money from the government. It's how capitalism works, And everyone, no matter how liberal and no matter how staunchly Democrat they are, they always go, yeah, that would be a great idea. And I'm like, well, that's called school choice. This is Ronald Reagan's idea, but the Democrats fight it tooth and nail. And I'm like, well, why would they fight it? I'm like, well, unlike you, whose intentions are good, their intentions are to keep control of these people, keep them down where they're dependent on the government. Republicanism wants to make people independent, self-reliance. That's just a principle of republicanism. I said, and number two, they're corrupt. These unions donate tons of money to their campaigns, and then in turn, they keep these kids locked in these union schools and donate money back to the unions. It's like a vicious cycle. And then you can do the same thing with grown-ups. These people don't have money. They need more welfare. And I said, well, instead of giving them more welfare, why don't you help them to get a job? Well, how are you going to help them to get a job? Their neighborhoods are so bad. There's no jobs where they work. And I said, well, it's like this. It's like, if someone is starving, I always say this, if there's no food on the table, if there's food on the table, there's many problems. If there's no food on the table, there's one problem. So if someone's starving, yeah, you got to feed them. So, you give them a fish. But you're not doing them any favors if you bring them a fish every night. You bring them a fish, you get them fed, and then you teach them how to fish. And then you take it one step further, and the ponds that are in his neighborhood, you stock with other fish and food and clean it up so it attracts more fish. And would be like going into a poor community. And a lot of businesses don't want to go into poor communities because the tax rate's so high. The insurance is so high because, the crime. So if the government just gives them like this huge tax break, gives insurance companies huge tax breaks to insure these companies will come in. It'll be like stocking the pond with more fish. I'm like, that's a great idea. And we say, well, that's what we call enterprise zones. That's what Donald Trump did. That's why black unemployment was the lowest it's been in the history of America when he was president. He did that in the inner cities. It's called enterprise zones. It's a Republican idea. So that's how I would flip the script politically. And then I would also add, when they would say, well, how come? And I would say, but Democrats fight it. AOC, prime example. Amazon wanted to bring a huge Amazon warehouse into her district. I think her district is Brooklyn or Queens, or it might be partly Brooklyn, partly Queens. But they were gonna build a huge warehouse. It would have brought 30,000 good-paying jobs to her district, and she blocked it because they were asking for tax breaks. So they went to another state. They got the tax breaks, and they gave another state 30,000 jobs. And she was like, yeah, we beat the rich. It was like, you didn't hurt Amazon. You hurt the people that needed a job. And again, she wants to keep people down. The Democrat, I don't think she's smart enough and, has the ideology to keep them down. She actually believes the propaganda of the Democrat Party. And she got her job. This is a fact. She ran on the socialist ticket in New York. And the socialists actually had auditions. They gave them like a script to read, and she read it the best, and she got the job. So she's really just an actor. So, she may not believe anything she says, but she might believe it. So that's how I would flip the script politically. Now, religiously, same thing. You got to go in there with an attitude and listen. And, when I say you could be wrong, just remember God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen twice as much as you talk, because you could be addressing objections that the unbeliever don't even have. And then you're putting doubt in their head, almost like sales. I hear so many salesmen, they don't listen to their customer like I sell energy drinks, I deliver them, but I sell them. And the customer might be saying, I don't have room in my cooler. And the guy's going on and on about the great ingredients and what a superior product is, but he never addressed the objection that there's no room in his cooler, And in reverse, someone might be ready to buy, ready to believe, and you just keep talking and talking and don't lead them to the Lord. Like the Wolf of Wall Street, I heard him do a seminar about sales, and he said when he was, balling with a ton of money, he went to buy a Lamborghini, and he was ready to buy. He told the guy, I want that Lamborghini, and I'm going to write you a check right now, cash. And the salesman just kept talking about the Lamborghini and telling him, well, he should do it this, he should get this one. And after like a half an hour, he's like, you know what? Never mind. I don't have time for this. And he left. He said all that salesman had to do was say, okay, and give me the paper, and I would have signed. So you have to be in tune to the person you're talking to. You have to listen. And, most people, when you tell them about the Lord, most people are not atheists, but they just don't believe that we can know which God is the true God, which religion is the true religion. So they just kind of wing it through life. So, if someone says to me, well, you say Jesus is the way, and the Muslims say this and the Hindus say this, how do I know who's right? How do you know you're right? Instead of me start talking about the objections of God exists and then putting doubt in his mind, does God exist? Because then I'm giving him objections that God even exists. I'm addressing like an atheist. I'm off track. But if I listen, I'm like, okay, this guy believes there's a God. He just doesn't think we can know who it is. So now I got it narrowed down. So I could say, brother, all these religions have goodness in them. They teach good moral principles, but they all teach you that Jesus is a way. The Muslims talk about Jesus being a great prophet. All the Eastern religions talk about Jesus being a great teacher. But Jesus said he's the only way. Christianity is the only religion that says Jesus is the only way. All these other religions teach that in some form or another, by doing good works, you could work your way to heaven. Christianity says, no, we can't work our way to heaven. We can't get to God. God had to come down to us and die for our sins. So Christianity is unique amongst all religions. And Jesus is unique amongst all religious figures. Jesus said he would raise from the dead. And he did. Historically, it's proven. And he said that we can have eternal life if we believe in him. So if he was right about raising from the dead, we could be sure that we could have eternal life if we put our trust in him. And they're like, well, how do you know he raised from the dead? And I'm like, we have historical evidence. First century historians, Tacitus, who was a Roman, and Josephus, who was a Jew. Neither one of these were Christian believers. Both attest that there were many Christians who said they seen Jesus after he was crucified. They seen him crucified, and they seen him after he was crucified. And they went to their death. They were killed for saying this. Now, Tacitus and Josephus may have never become believers, but that's even a stronger evidence that they were reporting the history of that day. And every scholar and every ancient historian believes Tacitus and Josephus to be accurate historians of their day. So these unbelievers are telling us that many hundreds of people were killed because they said Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, people lie to get out of trouble, but I don't know anyone who's going to lie to get into trouble, And the New Testament tells us that there were over 400 witnesses to Jesus' resurrection. And the unbeliever might say, oh, well, that's the New Testament. Well, the New Testament are the most historical documents we have. According to scholars and ancient historians, the New Testament is by far the most reliable and accurate ancient historical documents that we have. They're historical documents. Now, the Catholic Church decided that they were inspired by God and put them in the New Testament in the Council of Rome 382 AD. This is how we have the New Testament. But before that, they were just historical documents and today historians that are not believers see them as historical documents. And they are the most historical evidence. They're the most historical, reliable evidence that we have of ancient history. And even self-described agnostic atheist, Dr. Bart Ehrman, who's considered the top scholar on the New Testament, says, yeah, they're the most reliable. They're like 99% pure. There's a lot of variations, from when they, one scribe translated it in another, but he said they're just so minor, they don't affect any major Christian doctrine. This is an unbeliever saying this. And he says, yes, many of these believers believe they saw Jesus after his death. Now, he just doesn't believe it because he has a presuppositions that miracles don't happen, that people don't rise from the dead. But historically, the evidence is there. So that's how I would handle that objection. But the way you win is by making a friend. Even if you don't get them to concede that you're right, don't make it into a fight or an argument. If you feel yourself getting angry, you're doing something wrong. You shouldn't get angry. They shouldn't get angry. We're sharing the truth because we love them, and we love them because Jesus loved them. And if they're good enough for Jesus, they're good enough for us, man. So God bless and stay Catholic.